Imagine waking up in a modern European city. Cars exist, cameras exist, newspapers circulate freely. The world is already stepping into what we call the modern age. Now imagine walking outside and finding a crowd gathering to watch someone die. This is not the Middle Ages. This is not ancient history. This is June 17th, 1939. That morning in Versailles, France, the state carried out the last public execution in history. A guillotine was erected. Spectators arrived before dawn. Some climbed walls and lampposts. Others brought children. Photographs were taken. What was meant to be an act of justice unfolded before a crowd that watched in fascination. This moment would mark the end of centuries of public executions, not because the punishment disappeared, but because society could no longer ignore what it had become. The man at the center of that morning was Eugen Weidmann. To understand why this execution ended an era, it is necessary to understand who he was and what he had done. During the years of the First World War, still young, Weidmann began committing small thefts. Convicted of robbery, he spent 5 years in prison. When he was released, he did not return to society reformed. He returned hardened. It was inside the Proingensheim prison that he met Roger Million and Jean Blanc, men already experienced in crime, imprisoned for counterfeiting money. Once free, the three formed a calculated plan. They would target tourists in and around Paris, people traveling alone, people unlikely to be immediately missed. Victims were approached with offers that seemed harmless, a job opportunity, a private meeting, a short excursion. Once isolated, they were taken to remote locations. Many were killed almost immediately, sometimes with a single shot to the back of the neck, other times by strangulation. Only afterward were valuables taken. The bodies were buried, hidden, and left undiscovered. At least 6 murders were attributed to the group. Among the victims were Fritz Frommer, a former prison acquaintance killed to ensure silence, Janine Keller, who believed she had accepted a position as a governess, Jean de Koven, a 22-year-old dancer visiting from New York, Joseph Koufi, a taxi driver, Raymond Lesaube, a real estate agent, and Roger Leblond, a theatrical producer, a death Weidmann later claimed had been carried out by Million. These were not crimes of impulse. They were methodical, planned, repeated. The investigation collapsed the moment a single detail was overlooked. Weidmann left his business card at Lesaube's office. When police traced the card and attempted to arrest him, they were met with gunfire. He was eventually captured. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Weidmann confessed to the murders and identified his accomplices. The trial was swift. The verdict was certain. Weidmann was sentenced to death. His accomplices were not. Roger Million, though also condemned, had his sentence commuted to life imprisonment. Jean Blanc received a significantly lighter sentence. Colette Tricot, a woman connected to Million, who had assisted the group by impersonating Jean de Koven to cash travelers' checks, was fined for her involvement. Only one man would face the guillotine. On the morning of the execution, the crowd's behavior shocked the nation. Witnesses described laughter, shouting, and people scrambling for better views. The atmosphere resembled a spectacle rather than an act of justice. Photographs circulated rapidly, capturing not only the execution, but the faces of those watching. This reaction deeply disturbed French President Albert Lebrun. He concluded that public executions no longer served their intended purpose. Instead of deterring crime, they had become events driven by emotion, curiosity, and fascination. Justice, displayed before a crowd, had transformed into entertainment. Soon after, the law was changed. Executions would no longer take place in public spaces. They would be carried out inside prisons, behind walls, away from crowds and cameras. The guillotine remained in use, but only in private. Executions continued for decades after that morning in 1939. The final one occurred on September 10, 1977, when Hamida Jandoubi was executed in France. No crowd gathered, no photographs circulated. 4 years later, in 1981, the death penalty was abolished entirely. What makes June 17, 1939 so unsettling is not only the crime or the punishment, but how close it is to us. This was less than a century ago, within living memory, a moment when the modern world looked at itself and turned away. The last public execution did not end capital punishment. It ended something older, the belief that death should be witnessed. History does not disappear. It simply moves behind closed doors.
History rarely ends. It simply fades from view. What we call the past is not a distant world. It is the foundation of the one we live in now. Its decisions, its mistakes, and its forgotten moments still echo quietly beneath the surface of our present. Some stories were erased, others were hidden, and some were never meant to be remembered at all. Here, we return to them, not to glorify, but to understand. If this story made you pause, reflect, or see the world a little differently, consider subscribing to Files of the Past. Leave a like if you want more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. History is never complete without perspective. Until next time.